Hi, this is Chuck Salisbury, and the purpose of the video that you're watching right now is one purpose only, and it has to do with this. It has to do with the number one investment in America. That's the reason for this book. I wrote this book actually over a year ago, but it took me almost 3 years before I had the confidence to name the product that we're going to be talking about today as the number one investment in America. Now let's give a little bit of background. I started in the securities industry in 1974. Some of you people perhaps weren't even born in 74. But in 1974, I started in the municipal bond business in Beverly Hills, California, and I started doing municipal bonds. That was my occupation. From that point, I went with Michael Milliken and doing junk bonds, which again is a fixed income investment. I did annuities, and I did other fixed income investments. I never did any stock, even though I had the license to do so, until I joined Shearson Lehman Brothers as an investment banker. Then I was a specialist in reverse mergers. And that is a different story. The mergers there has to do with stock. But all this time that I spent in the securities industry, if someone had asked me, Chuck, what's the number one investment in America? Because I don't want to take number 2 or 3, I want number 1. My answer would be, I have no idea what's number 1. I could only quote from the products that I had experience in. It wasn't until years later, when I was not working full-time in the industry. I retired from the securities industry to do what? Write books. This is one of the books, the latest book that I wrote. And it took me quite a long time before I had the confidence to name this product as the number one investment in America. Now, how did I get to be confident? Because coming from the industry that I came from, I was very skeptical. Somebody said, hey, I've got a friend of mine, they're earning 12% on their money and it's fully insured. My answer was, it's impossible. There's no such thing. I mean, AAA rated is what something would be if it's fully insured. Going back to my heritage in the bond business, if it's fully insured, it's AAA rated, whether it's Standard & Poor or whatever. So if you have something AAA, you don't have to pay 12%. All right? You can pay 3%, 4%, not 12%. Didn't make any sense to me. But the more I learned about it, and it took me 2 years to gather all the facts and process it through my brain. This is a real product. How do I know it's a real product? And how do I know that you're going to get 12%? Maybe more, maybe a little bit less. But in that category, it is the perfect vehicle for your retirement account. If everything I'm telling you right now is true, and it is, okay, wouldn't that be a good choice for your retirement accounts? And because it's AAA rated, it's not, but it should be. Would the banks invest in a product like that? Well, yeah, that's where I would go number 1. I would go to the banks and find out, well, do the banks know anything about this, the number one investment in America? Because if they know about it, they're putting money in it. Guess what I found out? The banks in America have invested over $200 billion in this product. Yeah, the banks love it as much as anybody else. Warren Buffett, Bill Gates Foundation, there's a lot of wealthy people and banks that invest in this product. Wouldn't you like to know what this product is? I'm going to tell you right now. It's life insurance policies. Can you believe that? Life insurance policies? Some people say, I didn't even know you could buy a life insurance policy. The answer to that question is, well, I didn't either. I didn't know that, but there's a Supreme Court decision going back to the early 1900s that classified a life insurance policy as a legitimate ownership investment that you can put on your balance sheet. And remember the AIDS epidemic? Well, it's a number of years ago, but I remember it. The AIDS epidemic is where certain people got AIDS and there was no cure. Talk about what we're going through now. At least now we have a vaccination that will protect you from this virus that we have now. But when the AIDS epidemic was going on, folks, that was it, and it was a death sentence. And so what happened is the people that had AIDS who wanted to live, and the cost of any treatment was very expensive, guess what they sold? They sold their life insurance policy. Why? Because obviously if you have an illness, which means your life is about to end, wouldn't a life insurance policy, in other words, becoming the owner of the policy and the beneficiary in the policy, wouldn't it be a good investment? Well, of course it was. And a lot of people bought life insurance policies from people with the AIDS epidemic. The people that needed the money got the money. The other people got an incredible investment. Just as a side note, by the way, you ever heard the name Babe Ruth? Baseball player, right? During the Great Depression, he was playing baseball. Guess what his investment was? Life insurance policies. Babe Ruth invested his money in life insurance policies. So somebody must have known about it then, and now you know about it. Banks invest $200 billion in life insurance policies. That's a lot of money. They must be pretty convinced that it's a good investment. And what I want you to know by listening to this video, I want you to know more about it, how you invest in it, how we buy policies, how much we pay for policies, and what is the criteria. What is the determining factor in whether or not we buy somebody's life insurance policy? One thing is, of course, you have to be normally in the 70s or 80s, likely, okay? One of the criteria, but there's more to it than that. So if you'll stay tuned, this video is going to be longer with more facts and more details, but I guarantee you this, when I'm through with this video, you will know enough about investing in life insurance policy to make this decision. The decision is simple, and you'll learn at the end of the video. You'll learn that you can go to my website. You'll learn that you can give me a call. You can send me an email. Any questions that have not been answered with this video will be answered. We don't want you to make an investment in this product just because the banks do, just because Warren Buffett does. That's not the reason for you to invest it. It has to be right. It has to be right for you. You make that decision. But if you have a retirement account, judge this product against anything else you're doing. So just to let things mellow with you, we have documents that we send to you. These documents you should read because you have to sign the documents, okay? This is a contract, an agreement between you and the companies that I represent. Companies because there's more than one company. And the companies I represent, for example, Coventry.
We thought we had planned carefully for our retirement.
But we quickly realized we needed a way to supplement our income.
Our friends sold their policy to help pay their medical bills. And that got me thinking, maybe selling our policy could help with our retirement.
I was skeptical, so I did some research and called Coventry Direct.
You've seen that ad. It's been on television and radio all over the country. Well, Coventry buys life insurance policies. Who do they buy life insurance policies for? Well, obviously, for the people that buy them, which would be the banks and the wealthy people. That's their clients. So yes, if you have a life insurance policy and you'd like to sell it and you don't know what the price is, you want to give me a call. That's a reason for giving me a call. Now let's talk about the agreement. This is very important. If you look up on the agreement that we're going to get for you, there's something I want you to pay particular attention to. Number one, the amount of money that you propose to invest. That's number one. It's up in the corner. Okay, let's say it's $100,000. Now, $25,000 is the minimum. But if you invest $100,000, just to use round numbers, right below the amount of the investment that you make is the return on investment, ROI, return on investment. Now this is not a guess, These are real figures, and this, because it's a contract, this is exactly how much you will get if you invest $100,000. Right underneath it says 60% yield to maturity, and next to that is a figure that says 160,000. That is what you're going to get. Nothing more, nothing less. It's a contract between us. All right? So if you want an illustration, all you have to do is give us a call. I'll get an illustration. I've got to have your name on it because it is a contract between us. It's an agreement. Obviously, it's not the only thing you have to sign, but it's where we begin. If you're satisfied with the yield that we're offering you, you sign that agreement, send it back to us, and there's a bigger agreement. Why? Because as I said earlier, life insurance can be an investment just like a piece of real estate. It can go on your balance sheet. And just like a piece of real estate, we have to go through escrow. Okay, for you to make the investment in a life insurance policy, we're talking about a portfolio of life insurance policies, not one policy. If you wanted to buy one policy because you have a lot of money to invest, we can take care of that. But for most people investing, 25, 50, whatever, they would like diversification. So we put together a portfolio of policies. It could be 7 or 8 policies. And the unpredictability of somebody's death makes it a good idea to have this diversification. So that's another important point to consider when you're thinking, is this a good investment for me? Is this going to help me personally? Having 12%, earning, well, actually 12% doubles in 6 years. Did you know that with compounding? It's called the rule of 72. If you know the rule of 72, you take 12, divide it into 72, and you come up with the letter 6. Well, 6 is the number of years it will take for your investment to double. So if you invest $25,000, in 6 years you'll have $50,000. 6 years later, the 50 will be $100,000. So if you're saving for retirement, it is not difficult for you to make those projections. Understand, we are assuming that this is going to be compound interest. And when you open the account with this, you indicate, I don't want distribution because of my age, because I'll get taxed on it, but I want it to roll over. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Every time you get a distribution, it'll be rolled over into another portfolio or the same one you're already in. Therefore, it will compound. If it's confusing to you, be happy to talk to you about it. The illustration will answer some of your questions, but not all your questions. Thank you. Stay tuned for part 2. Again, thank you for staying with us, and now we're going to give you some more information that's a bridge from what you've already learned to this portion, which has to do with life insurance policies. How do we get them? How do we buy them? What is the procedure? If you're a seller of a life insurance policy, you're going to want to pay particular attention to this to see if you qualify, if you want to sell. And if you're on the other side, what policies are we looking to buy? Okay, as an investment, remember, there are policies which qualify as an investment, and there's life insurance policies that do not qualify as an investment. So let me just jump to that fact very quickly. It's not complicated. Let's say, for example, that you're a typical person that has a life insurance policy, and we're going to go back in history now. Number one, your policy is over 2 years old. Why is that important? Because within the first 2 years, if you were to do something like die from an illness that you didn't tell us about, we don't have to pay off the policy, but we do have to give you your money back, all right? But after 2 years, after that, you're home free. So your policy, number one, is a requirement that your policy be over 2 years old. Number two, When did you buy the policy? That's not so important for us, but it is important for you. Normally, when we buy policies, they're from people that are senior citizens. They bought the policy a long time ago with the purpose in mind. And the purpose is an absolutely wonderful purpose. You get married, you start to have children, you start to think, husband and wife, as you're talking, what would happen to us if you died? I'm talking about the breadwinner, the person that's creating the income that pays for the mortgage, for the groceries, for the college education, and everything. What happens to the family if the breadwinner dies? Well, the only protection you can have is insurance, all right? Another way, of course, you could buy real estate. You can buy other investments so that you have a lot of assets that they can depend upon to take care of them. But for most people, they buy a life insurance policy, and the life insurance policy can be, who knows, 5 million, 10 million, depends upon the kind of life that you want for your family, and also the premium payments that you have to make. It has to fit into the family budget. You can always change your life insurance policy if you start with a policy of $1 million because it's very inexpensive, but later on in life, as your income continues to increase, and as inflation takes over, you might decide to increase that policy. Now, you're not going to take the same policy and just say, well, call the insurance company and say, well, I want you to change it from $1 million to $5 million. More than likely, because it's a new policy, you're going to have to go through a physical again, all right? So it's not as simple as calling the agent and say, change my $1 million policy to $5 million. More than likely, you're going to get another $4 million worth of life insurance, in which case you have to qualify for it, all right? That's the procedure. So here you are, you've been making payments on your life insurance policy for all these many years. Well, the only way you can get that money back, obviously, is to die. I mean, it's a life insurance policy, and it is going to pay your family when you die. Now, that's not a particularly attractive thought for you, but anyway, it is protection for your family. Now, what does that have to do with us buying the policy? Well, there's one thing we're looking for. As an investment, we're not looking to buy a policy from somebody that's going to live another 20 years. I'm sorry to say, the investor doesn't want to make it 20 years. Remember, when we buy your policy, we own the policy, whether I buy the policy or the people in the portfolio. You own a percentage of all the policies that are in there. Okay, if we have 8 policies, you have a percentage ownership in those 8 policies. So that's called diversification. So we don't want a policy that's going to be 20 years because since we own the policy, guess who's paying the premiums? We're paying the premiums, which means you, as the investor, of course, a portion of the money is set aside in an escrow account to make sure that the policy will stay in force throughout the life of the policy. All right? That's what we want. We don't want to miss a premium and have the policy canceled, right? So we've taken care of that. So when we buy the policy, we take into account their life expectancy. And because we know, or we have an estimate of their life expectancy, we know how much money needs to be set aside in an escrow account. And so let's say the life expectancy, which we refer to as an LE on the illustration, life expectancy is 5 years. Now, we use the same people that determine the premium on your policy when you bought it originally. Somebody has to do that, and it's based upon the size of the policy and also your health. That does determine the premiums on the policy. So we use the same people, the actuaries, and they came up with a figure. What is the premium going to be? Now, I think you understand that as you get older, the premiums are going to go up. So if we buy a premium and you're the insured and you're 68 years old, do you think the premiums are going to stay the same when you're 75 to 80? No, your premiums are going to go up. And we have to make an adjustment for that because we have to make the premiums until such point as the life insurance policy is actually distributed. I was going to say the key word, but we don't want to go there, right? But anyway, it does happen. You pass away, we get paid, but you got paid already because we bought your policy for cash. So you're happy because now you don't have to get cash only when you die, in which case you don't enjoy the benefits. It goes to the beneficiary. If we buy your policy, we're the beneficiary, and we have to make the premium payments. That's our obligation. So we're not looking for a 20-year maturity. So what does that mean? Your health does play a role in the price that we pay to buy your policy. If you're extremely healthy, it's unlikely that we'll buy your policy. We would ideally like to have policies in our portfolio where the life expectancy is, let's say, from 3 to 7 years or from 5 to 7 years, something in that category. That's our portfolio. The investors are attractive to that. By the way, there's one other thing that we do. Let's say your life expectancy legitimately is 5 years. Well, that means for 5 years, we have to put the money aside to make sure the premium is paid for the next 5 years, but we add 2 more years onto that. So if your life expectancy is 5 years, we're going to have enough premium in the escrow account that no one can touch, so that if you live longer, we're still going to pay the premium. Now, the reverse is true. Let's say that somebody does pass away in the first year, which is unlikely, but it does happen, okay? That means that we've got 5, 6 years of premiums that we don't have to pay. What happens to that money? It stays in the escrow account because it is not an exact science, but we never want to run out of money to make sure that every life insurance policy that we have in our portfolio, every premium is paid. Okay? We never want to have a policy expire because we didn't pay the premium. That's not going to happen. As a matter of fact, one company that I represent has an additional insurance policy, so there's never going to be a call on the investors, because should the money in the escrow account ever run low, the insurance company takes over. So you're never going to get a call for a premium. But anyway, those are variables that you can ask me about, and we're happy to share that with you, and it's all in written material. Okay, so we're looking to buy policies. The minimum size policy is $100,000, but we can go all the way up to 5 million, 10 million in policy size. We'll buy your policy if you meet our criteria. Okay, now what happens? You're an investor, and you invest your money, and you have a percentage of ownership of each of these policies. And let's say 2 years. Let's not use the example of 1 year, even though it does happen sometime. Somebody gets an illness that's unexpected, but their life maybe pneumonia or something that affects their lungs, and they die in the first year. Okay. The question then you asked to me is, well, Chuck, how does that affect my payment if somebody doesn't live 5 years? Because the ideal situation is if everybody in that portfolio lived exactly for 5 years, you would get $1.60, which is 12% a year, right? Well, what happens if 2 years, or even 1 year as an example? For every dollar invested, you get $1.60, and it doesn't make any difference when the person dies. If it's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, as long as somebody does die within a period of 5 years or less, anything less than 5 years means your rate of return is higher than 12%. You understand? The example that I gave you is simple, but I want to emphasize it again because I don't want you to misunderstand this very important feature. If somebody were to pass away in the portfolio, one person die the first year, you get $1.60. As I told you before, it doesn't make any difference whether it's the first year or the 5th year or the 6th year or the 7th year. You're always going to get, by contract that we signed together, you're going to get $1.60. All right? So what is that rate of return for 1 year? I mean, if somebody dies the first year within the first 12 months, and you get $1.60 for every dollar invested, that's 60% on your money. Isn't that correct? Well, it's ideal, it's wonderful, but it's not repetitiously going to happen on every portfolio. As a matter of fact, I cannot predict for you, nor can anybody else. When you buy into a portfolio that has a life expectancy of between 3 and 7 years, which is typical of what we buy, there is no one that can tell you exactly when someone's going to pass away. Do you understand that? The uncertainty, if there's one negative in this whole conclusion, the conclusion is there is some uncertainty as to when you're going to get paid. Every time somebody passes away, you're going to get paid. Whether it's the first year or the 5th year or the 6th year, the amount doesn't change. The contract is, we know what the cost of the life insurance policies are. We have that fixed number, and we also know the maturity value of the policy. It's all in writing, so therefore it doesn't make any difference the year, but it does affect your yield. It does affect your rate of return. However, you're not going to get a check every month. This is not a fixed income investment, all right? You're going to get paid when the policy matures. That's when you're going to get paid. How much are you going to get paid? $1.60 for every dollar invested. So if you want income every month, that's called a bond. We can get you income every month, but it's not life insurance policies. They're corporate bonds. We can get you a corporate bond that pays 8.5% for 1 year, 2 year, but that's a different investment entirely. And by the way, it's not insured. Life settlement is 100% insured. Why? Because everything we're buying is a life insurance policy. And in 150 years that they've been keeping a record, 150 years, there's never been one case of a life insurance policy not paying, all right? 100% expectation you will get paid. Isn't that what you want? Safety, security, and predictability? Well, to the extent possible, we give you those things, which makes it an ideal investment for your retirement account. You can sit down and do some calculations, and you can figure that in this particular case, when you retire, the money in your account is going to grow substantially. We'll work with you on that. We'll work the figures, but you have confidence that you are not going to lose any money, but you're going to get 12% per year on your money. Now, ready to go to the last segment, which I consider to be equally as important as the other two. Once you know this is a right investment for you, or your retirement account, or for your mother-in-law's savings account, or whatever, then we have to talk about where do we get the policies? And also, how can you participate? So that is what we're going to talk about next. Well, I want to thank you for staying with me for this period of time, and I hope you've learned something from what I've been talking about. And I understand that maybe you're not going to recall everything, and that's okay. I mean, I've been in the securities business since 1974, so some of the time when I talk, for me it's like this is old news. I use terms sometimes that to me is like, A, B, C. But for you, maybe there's terms or expressions that I talk to you about, return on investment, ROI, or something else that maybe you're not too clear with. Folks, this is not the end. Okay, this is the beginning. Knowledge of a particular product opens the door for you to get a lot more knowledge. And as a matter of fact, if you're going to put your money in something, I have a philosophy that I've been with me since 1974. Do not make an investment until you understand what you're investing in, which means know the outcome, know what to expect, so that there's no surprises. For the most part, investments are not complicated. It's just that the stockbroker knows more than you, or the bond broker knows more than you, or somebody that's talking to you, whether it's about insurance or annuities or whatever, they know more than you do because that's their business. but it's up to you to get as much information as you need so that of all the investments out there, what's the best one for you? If you're talking about a retirement account, whether it's an IRA or a SEP IRA, maybe this investment is the best place to put your money. For a lot of people that I talk to, this ends up being the place where they put their retirement income. Now, when you're talking about personal money, savings account, things of that sort, well, that's going to be taxable. You understand? You have a savings account. If you're getting 2% at the bank, you're going to pay taxes on it. If you get 8% at the bank, not happening, but if you get 8% from someplace, it's taxable unless it's within the confines of a retirement account. Then it will grow tax deferred, not tax free. Tax free is for municipal bonds, but tax deferred is for retirement accounts. Now let's take about 401k. If we take a 401k, it's a different investment environment than an IRA or a SEP IRA. Okay, it's a different environment. If you're in a 401k, normally that is a program, an investment program sponsored by your company. And they use a mutual fund or some kind of a investment vehicle where you get choice, whether fixed income or growth, Fortune 500, the different choices you can make within the confines of your particular investment. But everybody in the 401k has the same choices. So if you decide, well, Chuck, I'd like to put my money in life settlements, well, that's an individual decision. And in a 401k, you don't have the flexibility to say to everybody else, you invest in that, but I'm going to invest in this. No, you're going to have to take a distribution from your 401k and open an IRA account. With an IRA account, you make the decision. Nobody else. It's your money. It's your retirement account. The difference between a SEP IRA and a regular IRA has to do with the amount of taxes you pay when you retire. Okay? If you don't know anything about that, again, please ask us so we can fill you in, because it's a part of the final equation is where will you be better off than you are now. When you retire, wouldn't you like to have your retirement account actually mean something, be worth some? How about a retirement account that has grown to the point it's $1 million? Do you know it's possible? At 12% interest with money doubling every year, if you started with $100,000, depends upon your age, of course, but if you have that much in your retirement account and it's $100,000, 6 years later it's $200,000, 6 years after that, which means 12 years from now, the 200 is now 400,000. Well, add 6 more years to it, and what do you have? Your 400,000 is now worth 800,000. That's not fantasy. That's just working the numbers. That's the way it works out. It's called compound interest. If you don't know about compound interest, we're just going to have to sit down and talk about it. But if you'd like more information, if you'd like to contact me, the information is going to be on the screen here in a moment. My website is number1investment.com. Number one, not O-N-E, number1investment.com. That's my website. This video is also going to be on that website so you can watch it again if you want to. But there's a lot of information on that website that will be beneficial to you as well. Well, for example, my name and phone number and my picture, but you know what I look like. That's not important. And so far as your investment is concerned, it is of no value what I look like. What is important is that you will get further information about life settlements, life insurance policies, and how you can benefit from it. If you're a seller on a life insurance policy, just so you know, if you're a senior citizen, you have a policy and you would like to get cash for that policy, all you got to do is let us know. We'll get a bid for you from Coventry or someplace else, and we'll let you know exactly what we'll pay you for your life insurance policy. And by the way, if you have a $5 million policy, I'm just using an example, and you don't want to sell the whole policy, Well, divide it up in half, okay? Sell half of the policy. So you're going to sell $2.5 million and you're going to keep the other $2.5 million. Does that sound like a good solution for you? I'm going to enhance it a little bit better, okay? This is a possibility. You can sell half of your life insurance policy. You can keep the other $2.5 million of your policy, and we pay the premiums. Wow. Who'd ever heard of that before? Maybe that's new to you. For a lot of people, they didn't know they can do that. Well, it's all about the numbers, folks. I'm not saying everybody will qualify for something like that, but it is a possibility to separate your policy and sell off a portion of it. All of these things that you don't know, perhaps I do know. And if I don't know, I know people who do know. So if this sounds like an investment that would benefit you as an individual with a retirement account, however you want to condition it, I can help you. I'm here. That's the reason I did the video, is so you would know enough so that you could make a decision. The decision is simple. You call me and get more information. If it's right for you, we'll do the paperwork. You do have to go through escrow, like buying a piece of real estate, but it's not that difficult and it's certainly not impossible. And once you make the investment, you make the selection to reinvest, reinvest, reinvest. Then you get the effect of compound. Sound like a winner? I believe it is. It took me 2 years to come to the conclusion. The conclusion is this investment is the #1 investment in America. If anybody can find out anything better, please give me a call. It took me 2 years, and I'm convinced there's nothing better, safer than a 12% rate of return, fully insured. You can benefit by following up and giving me a call, going to my website, #1investment.com, and that begins the journey of transitioning from whatever you're doing to something that you know where you're going. Thank you very much for watching the video. It's an opportunity for you to learn a lot more about the investment that I'm offering you. So I thank you very much for spending time to watch the video. This is Chuck Salisbury with #1investment.com.